During our last time together, we talked about a number of things to include Mesopotamia, ancient Sumerian civilization. We talked about Hammurabi, the Old Babylonians, also known as the Amorites. I think we addressed very briefly the Kassites, the Hittites, the very warlike Hittites, and I think we closed the class period, with a brief introduction to that of Egypt. So let's take just a few minutes because we're going to be talking about the lecture today. We're talking completely about Egypt, and I don't think we'll even complete this section today. We'll still probably do it our next class session. But let me flip to the digital camera and give you a refresher here of what we had in the closing parts of the last class period, showing you the evolution of Egyptian history. Here, I'm not going to hold you responsible for that, but if you do have a copy of it, you can use this kind of as a guide. And I want to refresh your memory also that anytime we have an intermediate period, we have a time of turmoil and unrest that's taking place in Egypt. All right, so let's go ahead and begin with the Archaic period. And during the Archaic period, let me get myself together here. I want to remind you before I go down any further with this that the Nile River, which is the principal river that runs through Egypt, I guess it's probably the only river that runs through Egypt, sometimes referred to by Herodotus as the gift of the river. I think I told you also we had hieroglyphics and so forth. All right, but let's get back to where I meant to go just a few seconds ago. The first pharaoh was that of Narmer, and this was in the Archaic period. This was a time in which there was a unification of power. There was a joining of the north and the south in Egypt on the Nile River, which created a free passageway, of traffic throughout there. If we flip over a couple of pages in your textbook, and I always hope you're following your textbook. I'm on page 26, but let me share with you what is called Narmer's Palette. Here's a likeness of it, the front side of it and the rear side of it. You can see it here. And if you go to the Egyptian Museum, and I doubt you will go to the Egyptian Museum anytime in the recent future, but if you do go there, you'll see this firsthand, see Narmer's Palette. It kind of looks like it's an arrowhead, and about the size of an arrowhead, but please believe me, it is not. This Narmer's Palette is probably, I guess, a foot wide, maybe 18 inches wide, and 2 feet in length. So it's a tremendous structure, if you will. All right, so Narmer, and let me get things back together here. But Narmer was our first pharaoh, and Narmer was our first pharaoh. Brought about a unification of unification of Egypt, and so forth. Now, another interesting figure here is that of Zoser. Now, Zoser was the first pharaoh of the third dynasty, and of course this is in the Old Kingdom here, so you have to go back and look at your outline there. And Zoser is given credit for having the first pyramid. Now, as you thumb through the pages of your textbook, you'll find Zoser's pyramid, which was a step tower. It's kind of like a ziggurat, and it was 6 steps to it. I've not seen Zoser's pyramid. You have to go a little bit further south in Giza to be able to see that. All right, now, during this time, the pharaoh was recognized as a child of the sun god. All right, this is the Old Kingdom. The pharaoh was recognized as a child of the sun god. And by custom, he married one of his sisters, and to prevent contamination of royal blood, there was no separation of church and state. The pharaoh was the chief priest, and all his subordinates were priests also, but just subordinate priests with him. The Old Kingdom is going to end with the fall of the 6th dynasty, and I don't care that you know that. And we're going to enter into the first intermediate period. All right, during an intermediate period, we have times of discourse. Let me get this down here like this. Times of discourse, and Egypt began to disunion, break apart. Various provinces were going to war with each other, and it was not a particularly good time. This first intermediate period ended with the rise of the 11th dynasty, primarily under that of Mentuhotep, the second, and Amenemhet I. And anyway, as it ended, we're going to move into the Middle Kingdom. Before we end this section completely here, we're going to be talking about pyramid construction later in the class period. It was in the Old Kingdom where you had all of these magnificent pyramids that were constructed. And they were constructed there, and if I remember right, I think it was during the Third Dynasty itself. But let's move into the Middle Kingdom here, and you can look at the dates there on your outline. And Egypt would move away from the construction of pyramids because pyramid construction was very, very expensive here. And it began to go to social reforms. These social reforms, such as establishing drainage system, irrigation system. This is often recognized as the classical age or the golden age of Egypt. Unfortunately, we're going to enter into a second intermediate period, and I think you know by now that anytime we have a second intermediate period, this means we have times of Hyksos, have times of discourse. One of the principal reasons for this, we had the invaders of the Hyksos, and if we translate this, Hyksos are rulers of foreign lands. That'll be one of your examination questions, by the way. So you need to recognize this, Hyksos, as the rulers of foreign lands. The second intermediate period will continue until we get to the New Kingdom, and finally, with the emergence of that of Ahmose. Now, Ahmose was a pharaoh, and through the leadership of Ahmose, we're going to see the Hyksos are going to be defeated. They'll either be killed, enslaved, or they're going to be forcibly removed from Egypt. All right, now let's go into the New Kingdom. The New Kingdom is quite different than what we had before. In all the other kingdoms that we had, Egypt was by and large not very militaristic. You had, basically it was like national guards. Like a community would have a militia, and during times of need, the Pharaoh could call into service, that of the National Guards. But as we move into the New Kingdom, and particularly with the 18th and 19th dynasties here, or I should say, the 18th and 19th dynasties, Egypt will become very militaristic. The armies will become quite fearsome, be very formidable, if you will. Some of the individuals so closely recognized with this period of time, Ramses II, Ramses III, or more properly would be Ramesses, is a little bit better pronunciation with that. This is the 18th, 19th, and 20th dynasties here. All right, now we shall move on with that. I don't think I have this on your outline here. But we'll enter into a third intermediate period here. Once again, we'll find troubles will befall that Egypt. From 1,000 to 800 Libyan invaders invaded Egypt. Then they would fall to the Assyrians. Eventually they'd fall to the Persians, to the Romans, to Alexander the Great, and it was not a very good time in the history of Egypt. Now, for Egypt, they would undergo periods of time in reference to religions in which they would be polytheistic. Now, if you look at the word here, polytheism here, let's see if I can get that focused a little bit better here. Polytheism means the worship of many gods. And oftentimes they would be monotheistic or monolatry, in which we would have the worship of one God. All right. The principal god, the major god that is found in the Egyptian society is Ra, or my preference in the pronunciation is Re. Re is the sun god. Re is the sun god. You can always recognize it because it has the head of a solar disk on a hawk. And that's a representation of Ra, or Re. Now, during the New Kingdom, we get the introduction of Amon-Re, which is the principal god and the sun god here. I don't know if you're religious or not, but if you do, and you do pray to a deity, how do you end your prayer? Amon, amen, Amon. So in other words, you're praying to an Egyptian god. All right. Now, another important god was the god which was known as Osiris. Osiris was, see if I can get this, there it is. Osiris was the god of nature, the god of the Nile, and Osiris is a god of male fertility, such as Amon. All right. Now, if we let's get down a little bit. And another important goddess in Egyptian society was that of Isis. Isis was the wife and sister of Osiris. Remember, you always marry your sister to prevent contamination of royal blood. Now, most of you probably are familiar with Leonardo da Vinci's famous painting, which is called Mona Lisa. Now, Isis is a goddess of female fertility. All right, and I didn't write that down for you now. So if we take a look at take a look at Leonardo's Mona Lisa, And if we play around with some words right here, because some people say that you can't even determine the sex to Mona Lisa when you look at the painting. But if we play around with a word here, look at Mona, Amon, and Lisa, we can pull from that Isis. So it's Amon and Isis, or in other words, translating words here, moving the words around, Mona Lisa. I don't know if you've heard that story before. I was first made aware of it when Dan Brown's book, The Da Vinci Code, came out. So anyway, that's that kind of a fascinating thing with that. All right, now, it was also during this time of the New Kingdom in which we're going to see the emergence of mummies. All right, I'll write the word out for you right here, mummies. And this is a long, drawn-out process. And, of course, what you're trying to do here is preserve the Pharaoh from life to death to the return to life. Now, notice what we have here. You have the life, you have the resurrection, the life and the resurrection with that. All right, and that's very interesting because the Pharaoh is considered to be a god. And so that's what you want to do, is that when the Pharaoh dies, you want to have the Pharaoh to return. So mummification is a process that for a Pharaoh requires 70 days. 70 days. If you're a lesser figure, such as a priest, you only are allowed 45 days for the mummification process. Now, you have people that are trained, they're kind of like morticians that are trained in the mummification process. If you should go into the Egyptian Museum, you'll find several tables there that were used in the embalming process. All of these artifacts have been preserved since that time. They're all found in the Egyptian Museum itself. All the organs are removed. It's a delicate process. All the organs are removed with the exception of the organ of the heart. The heart is always kept intact there. The reason for that, you have to judge the Pharaoh as to how heavy the heart is or how light the heart is, or is the heart mid-balance with that. And it's a real interesting process there. All the tissues are dried. All the internal organs are removed. The organs are taken and placed in mummy jars, and these are organ jars that are placed within the tomb itself for the departed pharaohs. Now, within the tomb, you'll have all the accoutrements for life, for afterlife here. In other words, food products would be placed there, weapons of war, chariots are placed there, the royal throne is placed inside the tomb, games, you may even have mummified children. You would have attendants and guards may also be killed and serve in the afterlife as guards for this. So anyway, it's a delicate process with that too. All right, now I want to go through something. I didn't write any of this down for you here, so you'll just have to kind of listen to me on this. But give me just a second here, and I want to turn in your textbook, and let's go over a few pages here. And this is a complicated process, and I'll try to guide you through this. And what this is referred to as, this is the Egyptian death cult. Now, the way the stories go on this is that Osiris was a good god, and Osiris was married to Isis, but they had a son, and his evil son, whose name was Seth. And Seth killed Osiris and dismembered the body and spread the body throughout Egypt. Well, the good son, Horus, came in and gathered up all the body parts and brought the body parts back together. So Osiris returned to life. And when Osiris returned to life, he served as a good pharaoh, a good god, and then descended into the underworld to serve as a chief judge in the house of judgment. Don't laugh at this. This is good. This is very, very good stuff here too. All right, in the house of judgment were 42 other judges. So when a pharaoh dies, and as the pharaoh dies, his soul separates from the body. The soul is referred to as the Ba. They also have the life force, which is called the Ka. So it's the Ka and the Ba. Now the Ka and the Ba are kind of like in a netherland. And so the Ka and the Ba will be gathered and collected up and led by Horus. You can always find Horus. Horus has a jackal head. Horus has a head of a falcon. It's a falcon-headed Horus. And Horus, And this is not a very good depiction here, and I meant to bring back an actual papyrus scroll and let you see that, but I just failed to bring that in today anyway. So if we look at this, what is taking place here is that we have Horus, and Horus is coming in and leading the Ka and the Ba into the house of judgment. If we look here, this is where Osiris is as the head judge in the house of judgment. We also have there other key figures here, which is which is Isis here, one of the keepers of the dead, and Nephthys, another keeper of the dead here. Now, if we look in the background here, this is a jackal-headed Anubis. This is Anubis, and we look to this side here. This is Horus. Horus, the falcon-headed Horus is here. Anyway, let's move on with this, and I want to show you what the scales of Mot are. And so take a few seconds here and figure this out. Here we have Anubis here, or Anubis as some people refer to it as, and I can't see, it's not clear enough to me, but what you'll have on one side of the scales here, down in this position here, you have the feathers of Mot, and you have on the other side of the scales here, this is the heart of the deceased Pharaoh. Now, what you want to take place here is an equal balance. The scales will come to balance there. Now, if the heart has been too heavy and the Pharaoh has been too mean, we'll say that this is the heart here, and the scales tip downward such as this, then what will take place is an evil monster. Here's the evil monster, which is present here, Anmut. And Anmut, which is part crocodile and part lion and part hippopotamus. And then Anmut will rush out and will eat the heart. And if it eats the heart, wherever I had the heart was, anyway, let me find it here. I'm working upside down, so it's difficult for me. And will eat the heart, and then you never will have a reunification of the Ka and the Ba. On the other hand, if we had the scales to weigh in the opposite direction, and if the Pharaoh has been too easy and the feathers of Mot outweigh the heart, then it also causes an imbalance. And then, once again, we find the evil Anmut here, the monster, will rush out and eat the heart, and there is never any afterlife. The Pharaoh's Ka and Ba just stays in a state of just eternity. If, however, the scales of Mot weigh and weigh equally, then the Ka and the Ba are unified. And when they do so, then this allows the Pharaoh to return to life. Now, this is so very important here, because when we match this up to Christianity, we see we have the final judgment here. The final judgment, it's the same thing. And then we also have life, death, return to life. That's an interesting story there. And I wish you were in class with me face to face so I can elaborate on that a little bit more at length. All right, now I want to share something with you here. And some of you probably recognize this. This is called an Ankh, or an Anka, as some people refer to it as, which symbolizes life, death, and the return to life. All right, so let's move on with our lecture here. And we'll find around the year 1325 BCE, the Pharaoh Amenhotep IV, I wrote the name for you right here, this is in the New Kingdom, made an attempt to alter the present Egyptian spiritual belief. He introduced the worship of a new god, and this god, which is called Aten. And with this, Amenhotep IV will change his name to Akhenaten. So work on that, Akhenaten here. Now, Akhenaten was married to the very beautiful Nefertiti. And they had, and it was not her son, but they had a son who was named King Tut. Now, Akhenaten was the father of King Tut, but the mother of King Tut, Tutankhaten, the mother of King Tut, was actually a secondary wife to Akhenaten. And incidentally, if you travel to, and I don't have a likeness of this, I think there's one in your textbook here. Let me thumb through the pages here, and if I can find that real very quickly, I'll bring it up on the screen here. And I don't see it right now, so I'll just have to kind of wing that, if you will, and I just don't have it. But I think there's a likeness in your textbook there of the bust of Nefertiti. Very beautiful structure here, and once again, I just cannot find it. It's in a different section too. your textbook there. Most of you've probably seen it before. If you go to the Egyptian Museum, you can actually see it live there, which, like I said, I doubt you'll be able to do that. So anyway, let's take a few minutes here and talk about the King Tut himself. And King Tut's tomb had been searched for many, many years, and unsuccessfully anyway. Now, King Tut was not interred in a pyramid. King Tut was down in the Valley of the Kings, which is located south of Giza, quite a distance, as a matter of fact, here. And King Tut's tomb was discovered. And in fact, there was a effort by Howard Carter, this was in 1922, to pay for an expedition to locate King Tut's tomb, and they were unsuccessful in doing this. And so what Howard Carter did, he called all of his workers in, and he said, look, we're going to be unsuccessful with this. I'm going to pay you your final wages, and you'll be on your way. And while all that was transpiring, one of the workers was seated in the sand and just kind of kicked around a little bit. And when he kicked around, he happened to see a depression in the sand and noticed that there was a stair. And working around a little bit, they cleared another stair. And then there was another step here. And so actually what they found is that they were descending down into what they suspected to be the tomb of King Tutankhamun. All right, so they called all the workers back and began the excavation process once again, and went down into where the tomb was and found the tomb door, which was still sealed at that time, and they broke through the tomb. And when they entered into the tomb, they could see it. They actually had like a flashlight sort of thing, and they were looking into the tomb, and they would see all these artifacts that were undisturbed from 3,000 years ago. Everything there. I mean, it was like 5 chariots. And if you were in class here, I would show you photographs of all those objects just in pristine condition. It had sledges, ropes that dated back to that period of time. I think you probably see that on your included videos for that. But it was so amazing with that. Let me go back to my documents camera here, and I want to show you something else with that. And when they found King Tut's tomb, you can imagine this. Let me get it where it's not reflecting so badly. But when they found the tomb in the coffin had a gold faceplate that was placed over it, such as this. And of course, this just covers the coffin where the head of the coffin would be. If you go to the Egyptian Museum, you'll find it there today. I cannot tell you how much value that it is worth with that, too. All right, so anyway, so that's Nefertiti and King Tut. Now, some of the Egyptian contributions that we have, writing, all right, writing is in the form of hieroglyphics. And let me share with you what this looks like. If we were in class, I would hand this out to you and let you see what it actually appears as. Now, the writing or hieroglyphics is, I can't read very little of this. Egyptologists are quite good at this. They could read this just like you're reading English or somebody's reading Cyrillic from Russia. But it is made up of alphabetic symbols. That's what you're seeing right here. It's also made up of syllabic. These are symbols that you track here. And it's made up of determinative symbols, such as what you're seeing right here. And if you were in class here, I would give you a homework assignment in which you would actually write a short message to your neighbor, your classroom neighbor with that. But nevertheless, we are not able to do that sort of thing. So anyway, look at that, and that's kind of interesting. And the thing about it is, with this hieroglyphics, how can you record this? Well, you can take paint or ink, and you can paint it into an object here. You can carve it into an object if you wish to do so. I mean, you can carve it into stone. These exact objects that you're seeing right here, which can be preserved. In the Egyptian Museum, they have on papyrus, or papyrus as you might want to call it anyway, they have some of this writing and drawings that date back 3,000 years. It's astonishing. It's unbelievable with that. All right, so anyway, and that's kind of interesting there with that, with the hieroglyphics. All right, now let me share something else with you on how do we do this. And I don't even think I wrote the word out for you, and I did not write this word out. But the word is papyrus. It's papyrus. Now you may want to write this out. Papyrus. Papyrus. P-Y-R-U-S. We pronounce it in English papyrus, and if you go to Egypt, they pronounce this as papyrus. And where this comes from, and I'll try to spend a few minutes on this, where this comes from is from a reed, and this is a reed that grows in the Nile River, particularly in the Nile River basin. Grows, I guess, probably 4 feet high, kind of like crossvine, if you will. I'd say it's probably a half an inch in diameter. I'm going to show you what a piece of papyrus looks like there. Now, you got to imagine this is dried, so you imagine it when it still has the fluid in it, still has water in it. It's about this big around, such as this. All right. So what the Egyptians will do, they will cut this, take a knife, and cut it into lengths. And this length here that you're seeing here is about 8 inches long, such as that. All right. Now, you got to think of it like it's sugar cane. Like sugar cane. Most of you've probably seen sugar cane, which has a bark covering on it. And so what they do is they peel that bark covering away. And so this is what you see on the inside, but it's very, very moist there. All right, now I'm going to use my finger, and I'm going to pretend that this finger is a knife. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to slice away a piece of the papyrus. Slice away. We're just going to make a lot of little slices out of the papyrus, such as that. All right, now let me shift over to something else and show you what I'm talking about with this. All right, so imagine that this is a slice of papyrus. Let me get this off here so you can actually see this. We'll say that this is a slice of papyrus here, and that this is another slice here. We'll take another slice here, all right, and we're going to roll it till we get all the moisture out of it, and then we take some and put it like this, such as this. All right, got that turned upside down. We're going to put another piece that is here, such as that. We got another piece, such as here, here, and here. Then we're going to roll it to where we remove all the moisture from it. Allow it to dry for a period of time here. And when we allow it to dry, then what it produces like a sheet of paper. All right, I'll use this for example here. So we end up having all these papyrus slices here, such as a sheet of paper, and I'm going to try to demonstrate what we can do. And now I can take here such as an ink, and I can draw things on that. All right, so it's just like paper in a way. Now watch what we have here. Remember we talked at an earlier time about cuneiform and how we had the cuneiform tablets, which were clay tablets. So you would have to literally carry those clay tablets around with you. You know, a heavy clay tablet such as this, and carry it around with you. You drop it, you can break it. You know, it easily crumbles. But watch what okay, I'll just keep it back here. Watch what I can do now. If I have my papyrus, I can roll it. You can roll it, such as this. You have your inscription on it. We roll it up, and we can preserve it for lengthy periods of time here, too. It's lightweight. It's easy to carry around. And obviously it doesn't preserve as well as cuneiform tablets, but nevertheless we have it right here. And what I was saying a few minutes ago, in the Egyptian Museum, they still have these today, 3,000 years later. And of course these are in hermetically sealed vaults. You can look at it through the glass enclosure, but obviously you can't expose it to air or anything like that, you know. All right, so let me flip my documents camera over, and let's get back to Egypt here. So that was some of the contributions that they made there. All right, so writing. Now, for the Egyptians, they also contributed to Western civilization astronomy or the Egyptian calendar. Now, we remember the flaws that we had. Let's get this back here. The flaws we had with the lunar calendar that the ancient Sumerians would have. All right, so it was 11 days short each year. So with the Egyptian calendar, the Egyptians realized that on a certain day in the year, that the sun rose up on the horizon at the same level as that of a star. And this star, we recognize it today as Sirius. Now, Sirius is in the constellation Canis Major, which is Big Dog. You can see it. You can actually go out in the appropriate time of the year, and you can see it. So what I'm trying to explain to you is the sun comes up in the east at the very same level as that of Sirius. And so what the Egyptians did, they marked that as like day one. And when they determined that day one, they found that 365 days later, then Sirius and the sun came up once again in direct alignment with each other. So in other words, they're able to now base a 365-day calendar. This allows you to determine when the wet season will be, which is a couple of months out of the year, when the dry season will be, which will be about 10 to 11 months out of the year. So it was a very, very effective calendar, the Egyptian calendar, much more so than that of the Sumerian lunar calendar. All right, we also had advancements with the Egyptians in medicine. They used medicine here, used plant oils, such as castor oil. They developed animal products such as ostrich eggs, tortoise shells. All this was used to treat gastric ulcers. They also took pulse, listened to the heartbeat, if you will, and even did cranial surgery. And some of these surgical instruments were removed from King Tut's tomb, and they're preserved in the Egyptian Museum today. The Egyptians also contributed to the advancement of mathematics. They determined 360 degrees to a circle, the ratio of a circumference, of the diameter to the circumference. They determined pi r squared. Quite an accomplished civilization here. They were able to compute areas of triangles, volumes of pyramids, cylinders, and even hemispheres. All right, now, what the Egyptians are best recognized for is that of their pyramids. I'll put this back here, such as this. One of the principal architects was that of Imhotep. You probably have seen him before. Now, where these three major pyramids are, and I'm not talking about Dozer's pyramid, it is not in Giza, but these three major pyramids are referred to as Khufu, Khafre, and Menkaure. Now, they're up in Giza. Giza is not very far from where Cairo is, perhaps maybe 15 miles away, something like that, 20 miles away. If you're going by car, it'll probably take you 2 hours there. In Egypt, in Cairo, you'll find there are no road markings whatsoever. There are no lanes on the roads, so it's just everybody on their own there. And you just have a very congested city with thousands of cars virtually going in every different direction. It's just it's just traffic jam. It's just log jam. Nobody moves anyway. But anyway, by the way, for those pyramids, you can actually see them from about 10 miles away too. And it's just so majestic here. But you can look at the textbook photographs that you have. I'll share some of the other photographs here with you. These are photographs that were actually taken of the three pyramids. You can look at your textbook photographs here. If you look at the one in the background here, let's see, I'm working upside down. I think it is this one here. That is known as Cheops or Khafre. It has a limestone glaze. All of these pyramids had limestone glazes to them at one time. But through the thousands of years, the limestone, the gypsum glaze, all fell to the bottom. You can see it crushed at the bottom now, with the exception here of Khufu or Khafre. And it's still present there at the top. I may have a better photograph of it at a later time. These pyramids are absolutely marvelous in structure here. 410 feet high and 41 stories high. Each side is a perfect north, south, east, west, 52-degree angle. And we're talking about developing these 4,000 years ago. And the engineering marvel to this, I don't see how in the world they actually did that. And I think a big part of this is on one of your videos that shows you the construction of the pyramids there. But it was all done in quarried limestone. And just you'd have many as 50,000, 100,000 workers spending 30 years just to construct this one pyramid, just for one pharaoh. It would take 5 years just to construct the scaffolding of the pyramid here. No construction took place during the growing season, and it was all slaves, that did the construction. Just peasant slaves that did the construction to these pyramids. Let's see what else I have here. Here's a couple of the photographs here. Now, these smaller pyramids, these are for the queens. These are for the queens here. The pharaohs would not be buried in those. Originally, the pharaohs were buried in what were called mud brick mausoleum type places called mastaba, and some of those are still present there to this day too. I wanted to show you this pyramid. This is the smallest of the pyramids. It's referred to as Mycenae or Menkaure. And when you go there, this pyramid is open to the public. By the way, you have to buy a ticket to get into this facility, but this pyramid is actually open to the public. And this is not the opening right here. You would think that it is, but the opening is. Let me get my finger right here. The opening is right in this area, right through here. And when you walk in, you can actually walk down to the burial chamber where the pharaoh was kept. He's not there today; it's all been removed there. But the one thing I remember about going through that pyramid was just the stench of urine, because people would urinate within the passageways there, which is unfortunate. You cannot climb on a pyramid. The authorities there will arrest you, detain you, and that would not be a comfortable place for you to spend a few hours, a few days with that. So anyway, that's kind of interesting. I want to show you something else here. Next to the pyramids, you can see the Great Sphinx of Giza. That's the pyramid is in the background here. That's one of the pyramids. I'm not sure which one. I think it's Cheops in the background. And you cannot get close to this Great Sphinx of Giza. You only get about a quarter mile away from it anyway. But it has the head of a pharaoh and the body of a lion. And the head itself is 90 feet tall. The body itself is 75 feet tall. So anyway, it's called the Great Sphinx of Giza. All right. I'm going to go back to the camera on me. Oh, by the way, before I forget this, I wanted to mention to you also here that during the New Kingdom, it became traditional to move away from pyramid construction. This is actually the Middle Kingdom here, and move to the construction of temples. Magnificent temples here have been constructed. They're as much as 400 feet long, have columns that are 70 feet. They're constructed in Karnak and Luxor. I've not been there. You have to fly to those places to actually see those. It's a rather lengthy flight, expensive flight too. All right, but let me go back to myself here, folks, as we start winding this down. Once again, these are the Egyptians, a magnificent civilization. I didn't quite complete this today. The next time we get together, I'm going to complete that on the Egyptians. We're going to talk about a couple other societies, the Minoan society, the Mycenaean society, and get into Judaism. And that's kind of a fascinating religion, to study. And we'll study that along with Christianity and along with Islam too. I want to encourage you to stay up with your lectures here. I suggest, as I've said before, do your supplemental readings. I would do those beforehand. I would do your narrative notes beforehand. I'd look at the videos beforehand, because you're just not going to have time to do it during the course of this lecture period. I'm looking at the lectures, I'm recording it, and I've already been almost 31 minutes here. So the class period is only an hour and 15, and you still have an examination to do and a number of other things. So anyway, stay with this. All right, thank you very much for your attention.